Father Simon and the Cookery Confessional. This is for my 14-year-old son, Max, who will actually be listening to this on the school bus on the way home. It's actually his 14th birthday today, and I feel it's time to come clean about something I've been hiding for nearly half of Max's life. Now, at this time, I imagine Max is thinking, what on earth is going on? So we're on in the coach. So hello, Max. Happy birthday.
Yes.
Hope everyone's got you a card and all that kind of stuff. And now everyone is listening. What on earth is Max's mum going to... It could be all manner of things.
Okay.
For the past 14 years, the making and presentation of our two boys' birthday cakes has been a bit of a thing. Phew, says Maxwell. It's about
Wrong
cakes.
cakes.
Yes.
All right, it's fine.
As we run our own design agency and being marginally on the competitive side, designing and making an amazing themed cake in true showstopper style to impress my sons and their friends has always been part and parcel of the parenting deal. Now, when the boys were little, it was easy to put them to bed, drag out the cake I'd baked the day before, decorate it in the evening while the little ones were safely tucked up. The cake presentation, being a thing, needed to be a secret, and obviously it needed to be increasingly impressive. However, as the boys got older, trying to hide and make the cake in the evenings when they are less inclined to be in bed by 7 p.m. has made things a little bit more tricky. So I'm sure you can only imagine my feeling of impending doom when the night before Max's 8th birthday, I was standing in my supermarket of choice at 7 p.m, staring pathetically at the cake ingredients with no cake theme in mind and definitely no cake sitting waiting at home to be decorated. My excuse was that I completed a full week's work, including 2 new client presentations, and now it was looking like a long, long night ahead. Having filled my basket with the ingredients to make and decorate some sort of cake, I walked miserably down the aisle to the checkout, where now to the corner of my eye, in the fresh cake counter, I noticed a row of 3 glorious, fresh chocolate cakes. A triple chocolate fudge cake, a slightly smaller chocolate cake, and a third, even smaller, very, very extremely chocolatey cake.
Oh.
Is it a Starvey Day?
It is,
Excellent.
yes.
I literally stopped and stared at the cakes for about 10 minutes, weighing up in my mind whether my conscience would allow me to take, just on this one occasion, a shortcut. I picked up all 3 cakes and put them in my basket. Then I took them out and put them back in the fridge. I couldn't do it. I had actually to make this cake. That's what I do. I walked off. But as I waited for my cake-making ingredients to move down the belt, I actually capitulated. "Hold on!" I yelled to the checkout girl. "I need something else." Sprinted across the supermarket, grabbed all 3 cakes and some extra chocolate icing for good measure, threw them onto the conveyor belt along with the ingredients. I would make the final decision when I got home. By 9 o'clock, the boys were tucked up and in bed, and my baking marathon could begin. My husband, who, it has to be said, had come to dread the night before the boys' birthdays, was fully encouraging and said things like, "It's too late for a homemade cake. We don't have a theme. He's 8, he'll never know." He said all this while lazing on the sofa with a large glass of Shiraz.
Well, we're all
"I can't cheat," I said, but as it turns out, I could. To my shame, I piled all 3 chocolate cakes on top of one another to make a tiered chocolate mountain about a foot high, slathered them with extra shop-bought chocolate icing, and plopped down on the sofa next to my husband, large glass of wine in hand, feeling relieved if a little guilty. And she's actually provided a photograph
Goodness me.
of the cake, which I'm just showing as evidence to
Yes.
Matt and Bobby. That is some chocolate
There's
feast.
quite a lot of chocolate there. Yes.
It's rather magnificent. Okay. Birthday morning dawns. Much excitement, present opening, and off to school. Max returned with a number of his friends, and after the usual frenzy of activity, the time came. I took a big breath, lit the candles, carried the chocolate tower cake out to make the big reveal. A look of total amazement came over the faces of the gathered party. What an incredible, huge chocolate edifice. What an amazing mother. What more could any 8-year-old boy want? The boys duly dived in, and all was good with the world. That night, as I tucked my tired but happy 8-year-old into bed, he leaned over, kissed me and said, "Thank you, Mummy. That was the best cake ever. You're so clever."
He really said that, did he?
Now was not really... well, maybe it was. I should confess my sin. I don't want to... Just to my adoring son, I could just tell him. Did I? No, of course I didn't. Instead, I took the glory. I kissed my son and said, "That's my pleasure, darling. I'm so glad you loved it. Took ages." Deed done, you might think. Crisis averted, cake enjoyed and appreciated, all good. However, the reason for my confession is this. Keen to never again have to feel so bad, I have continued year after year to make sure I've made the cake in plenty of time, always with a ridiculously challenging theme and a long evening of icing, modelling and a grumpy husband with a bottle of Shiraz. And literally every single year my son says something along the lines of, "That cake was really great, Mum. But do you remember the chocolate tower one you made? That was really, really amazing." He even mentions it when talking about his birthday at other times throughout the year. So every year I've been given the ultimate chance to confess, and every year I've smiled sweetly and just nodded. Yeah, I remember. Whew, that was great. So now I'd like to confess to Max. There he is on the coach. And I said, "I'm sorry and I'm glad you loved it, but I didn't make it. And yes, I did take all the glory." So, Father Simon, I request forgiveness not just from Max for not coming clean, but also from two groups of listeners. One, the baking congregation, who should know that making impressively decorated cakes really does take forever. And from the overachieving parents all over the country who found themselves up all night baking birthday cakes, sewing a handmade Little Red Riding Hood costume for World Book Day, or finishing the electrics on their son and daughter's 3D volcano project that's due in tomorrow. We've all done that.
Yeah.
Finally, of course, I should say, can you tell Max there is a cake waiting for him at home? And guess what it is? I bet it's another one of those.
Really?
Yeah.
I bet she's done another chocolate tower.
It's a homemade
dried
one.
fruit one, I think.
No.
Yeah. Everyone's favourite.
Anyway, happy birthday. Anyway, happy birthday, Max. I think you're going to have a monster of a cake when you get home. But this admiration for your mother as far as the cakes are concerned, your favourite ever cake, bit of a deception here, few lies being told. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
Well, parents of children will be breathing, I think, a big sigh of relief at this story. Because the thing is, it's such a great, actually, revelation you're doing this now when he's 14. It's actually, Louise, the right time. Because obviously there's great value in making your own cakes in your family. That's the value. It's not about he has a cake. Enough said, he has a cake. That's great. You usually make them. That's great. But this time, when you're working full-time as well and running a business, give yourself a break. I understand about the deception, though, because obviously you didn't want your son to feel less important because you didn't have time to make it because you're too busy working and doing other things. That's the thing. That's the conflict with parents.
And so,
sometimes they can't do it all. I think you're absolutely forgiven, but also teaching your son as well that he's can't always do it all. It's a good time to do this at 14.
All right, okay. Well,
You're forgiven.
Matthew.
Well, I frankly think she's made a bit of a rod for her own back. I personally subscribe to the school of parenting without the faff. So why are you bothering with this designing and making a cake? Get a big cake from the shop is absolutely fine. Even bothering with the icing, no thank you.
And claim it's
I'm
yours.
on the sofa with the Shiraz. However, I think listeners with an ear for detail will have spotted the far more serious misdemeanour buried within this confession, and that is the running off once you've put your stuff on the conveyor belt in the supermarket and go, "Oh, I'm going to get something else." No, once you've put the stuff on the conveyor belt, you've entered into a contract with the people behind you in the queue who have the number of times
we're moving into a
someone's
soapbox
gone off
territory.